Okay guys, this morning we have a late 21 model Toyota Prado here. So 2.8 litre diesel, and we're going to run through the installation of a dual battery tray into the driver's side area here. So we're going to go from the start to the finish, show you all the steps involved so that you can go about getting this tray into your Prado. Okay, so we're on the driver's side of the vehicle here. You can see an empty location, and this is where we're going to install our dual battery tray. Now the first step is removing this 10mm bolt here for the earth. So using a 10mm ratchet or spanner, we're just going to get in there. And we're just going to keep this bolt for installation later. One of the brackets of the tray actually mount in that location. So for now we just put that bolt aside. Now the next step is removing our AC bracket here. Now it's very important, probably the most important thing of the install is that we do not touch this silver nut that holds our two AC lines together. So removing that nut would actually let all the gas out of the aircon system. So we definitely do not touch this nut whatsoever. So what we are going to do is just release this bracket from its position. So just this top 10mm bolt. And by removing that for the time being, it's just going to allow us to be able to just move this aircon unit enough to get our tray into position. So that's all we need to do at the moment. So the next thing we need to remove is, if we just push our aircon line out, now that we've removed that bracket, we can see a plastic cable clip here. It's holding a small electrical cable under there. Using a flat screwdriver, we just need to remove that clip out of its housing. So I've got the screwdriver down in the top end. I've heard that release from the top end. There's a little clip there we're looking to release. Now if I lift it up to the top and get my finger in underneath now, and I think I just heard that bottom one release. Yeah, there we go. So the clip's come out. I'll see if I can give you a bit of a look at that so you can see what we're trying to do. Pull that cable up. So you can see there's a locator there and the same on the bottom. So it's a bit hard to get into the bottom one. So if we pop the top one first, that'll release, and then we can pull it out far enough to get our finger in and pop that bottom one. So we just want that one out of the way for now as well, just making way for our tray to go in. Okay, the next thing we need to do is, there's a small 6mm bolt with a 10mm head under the wheel arch here on the driver's side. So we need to remove that to make way for our bolt to go in. So if you come in and have a look, and a good thing to use here is a head torch, which I'm using one of ours at the moment, just to light up this area. What we've got is a 10mm bolt right here, if you can see that one. So what I'm going to do is remove that, and we're going to replace it with a longer one. So I'll just go in with my ratchet. Take that bolt out and put it aside for now. Now in our pack of bolts that come with the tray, you can see there's one long 30mm long bolt. So that's the one we want to use in this part of the install. So what we're going to do now is simply replace that with the one we took out. It just gives us a longer thread coming into the engine bay. And a bit of a trick is probably not to put this in all the way initially. It'll just make it easier to line up our tray. So what I'm going to do is just put this in finger tight initially, and we'll come back to that bolt later. So you can see what I've done there. It's still sticking out a bit into the engine bay, and yeah, we'll come back to that part of the install shortly. So our next step is placing the tray into position. So a little bit of manipulation to get this in, but because we've freed up that aircon line, we can move it out a little bit, but we want to get our leg in between the body of the vehicle, or the inner guard, and that aircon pipe here. So the one that we released the bracket on earlier. So let's go ahead and try and get in. And the other thing, so that's one thing we've got to look at, getting that foot down in there. And the other thing is we need to get this little leg up under our cables and hosing and our earths over there. So let's go about doing that. I'm going to start with the leg in the engine bay first, just get that down past the aircon line initially. And then because that's free, I can kind of put a little bit of pressure on that aircon line just to get my hosing and that over this leg. Okay, now that our tray is sitting into position, what we want to do is line up some of these existing Toyota bolts. So I'll start with this one because it's probably the most visible one, and we also want to line this one up with our AC bracket to hold that pipe again. So there's our hole there, making sure that we're going to go through the black bracket as well, and we'll just get that one finger tight for starters, and that'll help hold our tray into position. So the next one we want to line up is our earth, and we want to make sure that we have our earths back on there as well. So through the earth that we took off, find that 6mm thread, and just try and get that finger tight also for the time being. Okay, we've got those finger tight, and we can put our cables back into their holder there, and we'll just leave them finger tight. Now the third one that we want to concentrate on is that leg going down against the inner guard, and you might remember that bolt that we put through from the wheel arch. That's where we want to line that one up to. So I can reach under here, so I'm just going to put it through a little bit more and see if I can get it to line up with that hole. It's just finger tight at this point. Let's see how that's lining up. Okay, I can feel that's gone through, so now I can put this bolt through all the way from inside the guard. Okay, well, now that we've lined up all of our bolts that go into the existing Toyota holes, we can go ahead and do them up securely. Now this next step might be a bit hard for you to see in the footage, but we've got our leg that goes down the inner guard, and you remember we put that bolt through from the wheel arch. So now that we've got that thread sticking through that arm, we want to put a nut on the end. So it's just past there, but I'm not going to be able to get footage of it. So I'm just going to reach down, find that thread, holding it in between my two fingers, so I can feel that bolt now. Just going to get it finger tight, has gone finger tight, and then with a spanner I'm going to reach down there and do that nut up. It's a bit hard to get any ratchet or anything in there. It might actually be easier to use the open end part of a spanner. And just do that up securely. Like that, and there we go. And also while we're down there, you'll be able to feel that electrical cable that we just loosened off as well, and we can put that locator back into position into its hole as well. Just by pushing that, it'll just find the hole. You might hear it or feel it click. So yep, there we go, it's gone back into the hole. So the first part of this procedure is just to give us a bit more access. We're going to remove these two plastic clips. So there's one here, and there's one a bit harder to see in behind there. So I'll show you this one since it's a bit easier to see. So what I'm going to do, there's plastic on the inside of the guard. I'm going to hold that and just put a bit of pressure on it. As I release these clips, that'll help the pin to come through. So I'm pushing on one tab on that corner, and then there's on the opposite corner there's another tab, so just the two of them. Once we've got them pushed in, I can see they're released now. I can just push that through from this top end, and that pin's out. So I'm going to follow the same procedure on this one, which is a little bit harder to get to or to see. So move my hand over there on the inner guard, putting some downward pressure on it. One pin, two pins, and that's come out. So that's allowing us to do is just flex that plastic down inside the guard, and then we can get our hands in, we can drill safely. So what we want to do now is just check that that area is all clear, have a visual, and then we can go about drilling the holes through the mudguard. Just for some extra support, we just want to put 2 bolts through our inner guard, and that's fully accessible from under the wheel arch. So we need to drill 2 6mm holes through here. So I'm going to start with a pilot drill. Run that through so we know exactly where we are from underneath. And it's very important before you drill these holes to check the space under there, make sure nothing's in the way just before you drill. Okay, so now that we've put the pilot hole through, I will check the location again. And now we're free to put our 6mm hole through. Okay, well we've got our 6mm holes there. Before we go and put our bolts in, I'm just going to put some rust kill paint into that area. So it might be wise move to just paint those holes beforehand, which we can easily do from underneath. We don't need to remove the tray or anything. We can throw that paint in from underneath, from the inner guard. Okay, now that we've drilled our holes and we've put some rust guard, some paint on those holes, this is what we're going to need for the next step. So we've got our 2 bolts that we're going to put through that guard. So through the battery tray, then through the inner guard, and on the back side we've got a reinforcing plate just to strengthen that guard. So first step is probably putting our 2 bolts through the holes like that. We can sit them in, and then the next part is going to be from within the wheel arch. Now you can see these clips that we've removed. So this is from the bottom, there's it too, and it allows us to flex that panel down. You can also see where I've painted those holes. So what I'm going to do is, with our plate, I can flex that down with one hand, hold that into position, and probably easier to do this with 2 people. One person holding the bolts from the top would be easy, but I'm going to do it on my own here. I've got to stand up and reach one hand on the bolt inside the engine bay and one hand on the nut there. And just get them finger tight for now. So I've got that first one finger tight. I'm just going to tackle the second one, pushing through here. Got my hand underneath on the wheel arch, and that's finger tight. Now sometimes these bolts are the exact right length, and that's important because we don't want them to pierce the tyre or anything like that. If you have trouble getting these through, often just undoing these 2 a little bit just allows that tray to go a bit closer to the guard and just to get those nuts to bite on. So they are the perfect length, so that might be a helpful pointer. But these ones have gone in fine. So now with a ratchet on one end and reaching under the guard with a spanner on the other side, we can do up these bolts. So at this point, our base of the battery tray is fully secured, fully installed. So the next step is actually mounting our battery into position. So these trays are designed to fit a 100 amp hour like deep cycle battery. So that's what we're using today. This is a Delcore HDC 27. I'm just going to throw that into the tray, sit it into position, and then we can go about installing our hold down clamp. We'll run through that part of the install. So this is our hold down clamp, you can see here. It's designed to utilise these 2 J bolts going through and attaching to the dual battery tray, and also securing to a piece, a part on the body there. So we'll run through the procedure of this. So to make way for our hold down clamp that attaches to the body on the radiator support here, we need to remove this front grille to give us access. And it's quite easy to do with these plastic clips. So if you take a look at these clips, you'll see there's a center circle in them. So to remove these clips, what we want to do is push them down, and that will allow them to pop up, you can see. So that's allowed me to get that clip out. I'll just quickly run through the reinstallation. So if I push that center pole back up, you'll see it'll come above flush. And that allows me to reinsert those clips. Just play until they find all their legs into the hole. Once it's in the hole, if I go back to flush, it's locked it back in. So flush is locked in, down is remove, and up is reinsert. So I'm going to go through, take out all these clips now and remove this grill. Okay, now that those clips are out, we place them aside for reinstall later. We can just take that grill out and place it aside as well. And you'll see with our bracket, it's designed to bolt through in this location. So it's given us full access. So our first step is to insert the J bolts. Actually, just stop that because I'm... Okay, so the first thing we want to do is just put our J bolts in loosely, and you'll notice there's one much longer than the other. So the long one is designed for the airbox end, and it actually, rather than going into the Piranha tray, it's designed to go into the bracket on the Toyota body. So I'm just going to slide that through, and it's sitting into position now. Just take my wing nut off. Once I get this on, you'll be able to see a bit better where I've gone. I'll just put this on finger tight. So you can see down in there, there's a little bracket, little kind of Z angled bracket. And that J bolt has gone into a hole in the bottom of that bracket. So next we want to look at our short bracket, and that's designed to go into the Piranha tray. You'll see on the side of the tray there's a hole on each side. So by going in between the battery and the tray, you can see what I'm doing there. And then just turning that 90 degrees, you can see it's come out through the hole. And I'm going to just sit that over the bracket with my flat washer and do up the wing nut once again, just finger tight. Okay, so being finger tight means that we can still move this a little bit and line it up with our body in the Toyota housing. I can move my battery slightly within the tray. And now we're going to have one bolt left over in the kit, and we're going to use that through this hole. So we've got an M6 bolt here left over that we removed earlier in the install, and we've got a washer and also a 6mm nut. So just reaching under there and try and get the washer on first and hold it with my finger, and then I'll reach in with the nut. And then just start that finger tight. And now that it's finger tight, using a ratchet on one side and a spanner on the other, we can go ahead and secure that into position. Okay, and the last step in the installation is just to do up our wing nuts, and that'll securely hold our battery. We might want to do a little visual around the battery, make sure we're all clear. We haven't pinched any cabling or hosing going down there. We can see that everything's clear, and then we can go ahead and do up these wing nuts. And you can see our battery is fully secure. It's not going anywhere. Okay, now that our battery's all fully tightened up and secure, we can see it's not going anywhere in the engine bay. We can go and reinsert our plastic grille. Now there is one small modification we need to make to the grille. I'll set it into position so you can see. So we line it up, Because of our bracket here, which has secured our battery well, we're going to need to just take a little cut out of the grill, just a slight amount of plastic out there, and that's just going to allow it to sit back into position. So the easiest way is probably just to sit it into position, line it up with our holes there, and just mark where we need. So firstly, and just with a pair of side cutters, just cut that entire edge. So one cut there, so that's lined up that side. Check again, and I'll just line up the other side, and just one single cut like that. I'll just flex that out for now, and we'll make sure that that's in the perfect position. So there's a couple options now when we go and reinsert our clips back into position. So option one is that we just leave this the way it is. We've got our bolt there propping up this end slightly, which just means we probably can't get that clip back in. We can do all the rest to hold this shroud in, which will be fine. Alternatively, if you're willing to make a little bit more of a modification here, we've got our 10mm bolt head sitting under there. If we just drill a hole saw through there, much the same as these parts have been done for Toyota, drill a hole saw, that's going to allow that head of the nut or bolt to come through and our grill to go back into position, and then we can get all of our clips into position. So first option is like this, not touching the grill, and I'll just show you the second option now. So either a hole saw or a stepper drill, such as this one. So we just want to find out where our 10mm bolt is. And I can see him through there, basically there. And I'm just going to put a hole big enough like so. Get rid of our plastic shavings. So that's allowed my bolt to come through. I'm just going to do a slightly bigger hole just for the washer as well. Just careful to keep all those shavings. There we go, you can see that's allowed us to come down further, and we'll be able to get that clip in as well. So now it's just a matter of reinserting those clips like we showed you earlier,